how to make filthy neuro bass. When I make these kinds of sounds, I am recently more and more drawn to the generative aspect, because embracing the generative side of sound design allows you to end up with a lot of happy accidents that you may not have come up with if you were doing everything manually. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. I've got myself an instance of Serum 2. I've also placed a nice long F note that's 4 bars long. So let's get started. I'm going to put this down an octave and change it to a sine wave. I'm going to get a second wave. Let's make this a triangle, and I'm going to leave that an octave higher than this first oscillator. I'll tone it down because I just want it to be an FM modulator. I'll go phase distortion from B. I'll turn this up to just under half. And then I'm going to get a sample and hold LFO for some random modulation. Turn up the smoothing, so we've got a nice fluid motion. And I'm going to switch it from BPM to Hertz and make that a nice slow rate. 1.5 Hertz should do it. And I'll just have that be a nice small range here. And let's hear what we got with that. Nice, that'll do for now. And then let's also get some noise on here. I'm just going to go with the bright white, put that through a high pass filter. And I'll have the cutoff on the random modulator as well, because why not? Then I can have more or less noise at different points of the sound. I'll put the noise through the filter and take oscillator A out of the filter. Right, I'll probably need less of the noise. I want to add a bit more movement to this noise to give it the sensation that it's a bit more crunchy than it actually is. So I'll just make a shape like this, and I'll put that into oscillator C, turn the level of that down, and just control the level with oscillator C. So now if I go into the matrix, I can control the noise level with this slider. Right, that should do. I might add a bit of drive to that filter as well. So now, obviously, we're going to add some distortion, right? Because that's what this kind of sound is all about. Yeah, let's go with the overdrive because it's ridiculous. Maybe stack it up to 3 times. Okay, that already sounds insane. For the sake of more easy listening, I'm just going to put a filter onto the end, just so I can tame the sound a little bit while we're designing it. And then I'm going to add an EQ. I'll put that before this filter. And I'm going to use these notches, then add some notch movements into the sound, because that is one of the key components of neuro sound design. I'm going to apply these movements to our sample and hold random LFO. If you get notches in the low mid range, it's going to create really nice vowel-y sort of movements. And then in the high end, it's going to get this like crispy movement. So I kind of like to have a balance of good movement in the low mids and good movement in the highs. And then I can fine tune the amounts by changing the ranges of these filters. Nice. I'm going to duplicate this filter, and I'm going to make another sample and hold LFO, also on Hertz mode, make it a slow rate once again, smoothing all the way up. And let's get some more movements on this thing. Right, now we need some more distortion to bring back some of the thickness in the sound. I'm going to go with the soft saturation maybe. A really important aspect of creating these kinds of sounds is to make sure that you're controlling the sound at different stages, because a lot of distortion and a lot of compression goes into these sounds. So for this, I might just dip the highs out a little bit. And then maybe control a bit of the low mid range with a bit of a dip out. Nice. I'll add on a compressor to flatten the sound. And then we'll continue to just add filter movements. I'll get a couple more random LFOs as well. Same setup as the previous ones, maybe on slightly different rates, different amounts and ranges, trying to make it basically as random as I can, making sure to listen out to how it's interacting and make adjustments based on that. Maybe have this one going backwards. Might make both of these notches a bit thinner. Put that after the compressor. Duplicate that. And let's have another modulator on this second one, and then another on the first LFO. And the awesome thing about Serum 2 is you can add as many effects units as you like. So I can do this until I get bored or until my CPU dies, whichever comes first, really. And yeah, let's just add some more modulators to this, get a nice big sweep on this one, maybe change some of the cues. Also, let's get this first LFO and just modulate the cue. Love it. Now I'm going to bring back a bit more of the sound with some more distortion. Let's go with another overdrive, maybe stack it up twice. And I might add EQ just before that distortion, just so I can control some of these frequencies. Let's maybe dip out some of the highs at around 4K maybe. And then some more low mid business around here. And let's add a compressor and maybe put this one on multiband mode. The spectrum works in a way that the more low end there is, the less perceived high end there is, and vice versa. So if a sound is getting too harsh, you can counteract that harshness by bringing up the low end. Or if there's not enough low end, you end up with a lot more of those crispy overtones, and it can often sound quite thin. So you need to make sure that there's enough low end to support the sound. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a frequency splitter and set a nice range for this, maybe somewhere just under 300 and maybe like 1200-ish. And then I'm going to add some modulation to the mid-range. Let's add some chorusing to add some width to this, set some nice delay times, bring the rates and the depths down because I like to just have a controlled amount. And then I'll just bring that mix out a bit more. Let's add some convolution to the mid-range for some interesting texture. Let's go with one of the medium verbs, maybe maze. And then I'm going to just add the mix to this to one of the random LFOs so we can get more or less wetness. That sounds terrific. And then let's go with a bowed frequency shifter. Bring the direction all the way up. So we have a mono frequency shifter. It's like more of a classic frequency shifter effect. Maybe set a range like 43 hertz, which is the amount of hertz that our fundamental frequency is, which means that the frequency shifting will be more in keeping than if we were to just pick an arbitrary value. So I'll just shift this down now, and then I'll bring the mix down. And then I might have a random modulator on the blur and a different random modulator on the feedback of that, but not as much. And I'll add one more thing to the mids here. I'll add a little delay, and I'll have them linked and turn off BPM. So we just got the milliseconds values. I'll attach the milliseconds values to one of the random LFOs, reduce the range a little bit, and just have a short little feedback, but more mix. I'll just attach some hyperdimension to the highs for some nice widening here. Bring up the voices to 7. Actually 6, so we're more just on the sides. Play with the detune a bit. Let's add another reverb on the highs as well. The mix of this can be on a different random LFO. Bring the size up and bring the low cut all the way up. Change it to a vintage. Bring the decay down. Right, and now heading out of the frequency splitter, I'm going to go and just apply another distortion to just glue all of that together. Maybe one of the diodes. And I'm going to move that de-harshing filter all the way to the end. Nice. I'm going to add a final compressor. Right, I'll remove this filter because we no longer need it. We're at the last stages of this sound. And that's very harsh now, so I'm going to go into the matrix, go into our noise level and just reduce that a little bit. Terrific. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter, but I'm going to move that all the way up and put that at the very beginning of the chain. And then I can assign a low pass filter onto this. So that way we can get some really interesting interactions between all of that processing that we've set up and then how much the source sound is actually coming through it. One final step, which can get you some really awesome results. I like to add on another random LFO. Let's go with the chaos LFOs for this. And I'm going to assign X onto the rate of one of our random LFOs and Y onto the rate of another one of our random LFOs. And then why not assign one of our other sample and hold LFOs to the rate of our first LFO, but have that go backwards. So if I go into the matrix and go and set up the ranges, I'll set up the rate for this from 1 hertz to 2.6. Set this one from 0.8 hertz to 1.9, and get this last one and just put it down so the rate slows down just a little bit. I'll go back into the chaos, set that to an unsynced rate and make that be something really slow because I don't want the rates of our LFOs to be changing too fast, but I do want to have that nice random value generation there. One of the other aspects really crucial to creating these alive, monstrous sounding neuro basses is pitch bends. Setting mono and legato on, and then bringing up the portamento. And I like to bend this curve out a little bit so it's got a bit of a smoother pitch bend. Then we can go into here and just assign some pitch bends. For the sake of ease, I'm going to just attach one of our sample and hold modulators onto the cutoff. I'm going to attach the cutoff to a macro and create an automation clip. Right, that is super gnarly. So what I'm going to do is just go and put that into a mixer track, and I will just give it some EQ. Nice. So as you can see, the sound is actually different every time it's being played because we've got so much random interaction, which is fantastic. You just get this controlled chaos, right? So we could maybe add some more movement to this by getting a frequency shifter, mixing it out just under halfway, and you get this really cool phasing movement. And yeah, just export a bunch of these, or you could do it on single notes, depending on how controlled you want it to be. Then you could just find the parts that you enjoy, then use those for turnarounds or just like little fill moments. You can use as much or as little of these sounds as you like, then you can continue to process them afterwards. Honestly, the sky is the limit with these kinds of sounds, and you can basically get unlimited wicked basses out of this technique. So go ahead and experiment, because really the key to experimental sound design is just that, trying things, experimenting. With all that being said, if you enjoyed the video, you know how to support the channel, and I'll see you on the next video.